Close your eyes and imagine this. Deep in the jungles of Central America, beneath layers of vines, stone, and silence, the ruins of a once thriving world still rest. The Maya civilization, with its grand cities, intricate carvings, and mysterious decline, has long fascinated explorers and historians alike. Yet for all that has been uncovered, much remains hidden secrets tucked away in forgotten temples, buried beneath the rainforest floor, and preserved in fragments of painted glyphs that whisper of a world we are still trying to understand. This story is not about legends of gods or myths told at sacred fires. Instead, it is about people, the builders, the astronomers, the traders, the families whose daily lives created one of the most remarkable civilizations of the pre-modern world. From bustling marketplaces filled with cacao beans and textiles, to observatories where scholars tracked the movements of stars, to royal courts where alliances were sealed with rituals and politics, the Maya world was alive with complexity and wonder. Before we continue, take a moment to relax. And if you enjoy calm journeys like this one, remember to support the channel with a like and subscribe so you won't miss the next stories waiting to be told. Tonight we will wander quietly through that world. We will not rush. We will take our time like travelers moving slowly along shaded jungle paths, pausing to listen to the birds and the wind brushing across ancient stone. We will explore the lost secrets of the Maya civilization, how their people organized cities without wheels, how their knowledge of time surpassed even some modern calculations, how their trade routes stretched farther than most imagine, and how slowly their great cities emptied, leaving behind echoes for us to rediscover centuries later. This will not be a tale of battles and noise, but one of calm discovery. Imagine the rustle of palm leaves above, the soft call of night animals, and the distant outline of a pyramid rising gently out of the green horizon. That is where our journey begins. So settle in, breathe slowly, and let your thoughts drift. Allow the calm voice of history to guide you, as together we open the story of the Maya, one secret at a time. Deep in the heart of Central America lies a vast stretch of rainforest, its canopy rising like an endless sea of green. Within it, a mystery sleeps. The Maya civilization, which once flourished across this land, built cities so grand that their outlines can still be seen centuries later, even though the jungle has long since claimed them. As we begin our quiet journey into the secrets of this world, imagine yourself moving slowly along a shaded trail, surrounded by the calls of birds and the hum of insects, the ground damp beneath your steps. At first there is only the forest, but then, as your eyes adjust, you notice the shapes that do not belong to nature. A mound that rises too straight, a slope that reveals, beneath moss and vines, a carved stone. Roots clutch at what once were walls, and branches grow out of the corners of plazas where people once gathered. You realize that you are walking, not through wilderness alone, but through the silent remains of a civilization that once thrived with life, sound, and color. The Maya did not live in scattered villages alone. They created hundreds of cities, some small and local, others vast centers with soaring pyramids and wide plazas. These cities stretched across lands that today belong to Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. The Maya world was not one single kingdom, but many, a network of city-states linked by trade, by rivalry, and by shared traditions. At their height, these cities were alive with tens of thousands of people, markets filled with goods from distant places, and rulers who commanded impressive courts. Yet over time, as centuries passed, the jungle returned and covered much of what had been made. The stones, however, remain, whispering to those who pause long enough to listen. When explorers from outside first rediscovered these ruins, they were struck with wonder. Here were pyramids as tall as any built elsewhere, plazas large enough to hold whole communities, and roads stretching across miles of forest. And yet, these creations had been built without many of the tools that other civilizations considered essential. The Maya had no iron, no wheels to move stone blocks, and no beasts of burden to pull heavy loads. Still, they managed to cut, carry, and assemble structures that have endured longer than the wooden buildings of many later cities. Each stone was placed with care, every wall aligned with intention, and the result was a world of architecture that balanced function with beauty. Picture yourself at the base of one of these pyramids when the city was alive. The steps rise steep and narrow before you, carved from limestone, their surfaces glowing pale in the sunlight. Around you, the plaza hums with activity. Farmers have brought their produce from the fields, traders carry obsidian blades and woven cloth, artisans display painted pottery, and children weave between the crowds with laughter. The air carries the scent of maize being ground into flour, of cacao warmed in clay cups, and of fires burning low in hearths where food is being prepared. The sound of voices blends into a soft rhythm, people bargaining, storytellers sharing, news, elders speaking with calm authority. The city is not only stone and earth, it is people, each moment of their lives weaving together into the great tapestry of Maya civilization. The lost cities hold many secrets, and one of the most remarkable is how carefully they were planned. Roads known as Sakbi were layered with limestone, glowing white in the moonlight, and linking neighborhoods and even distant towns. Palaces were constructed with multiple rooms, some with carved doorways and painted walls. Temples rose above. The plazas, their steps climbing so high that reaching the top was a statement of endurance as well as devotion to tradition. These were not random constructions. They followed patterns, often aligned with celestial events, reflecting the Maya's deep observation of the skies. To the people who lived here, the rising of the sun, the phases of the moon, and the movements of stars were more than natural cycles. They were guides for agriculture, for planning, and for organizing life itself. Walking through these ruins today, it is easy to think of the Maya as distant or gone. Yet they were not merely builders of stone, they were builders of memory. Families lived, worked, and dreamed in these places. Generations passed knowledge down, teaching children how to shape stone, how to weave cloth, how to calculate time, how to prepare food, how to survive in a challenging landscape. The civilization was not the work of a few rulers or architects, but of countless individuals whose small contributions created something enduring. When we stand in the jungle now, gazing at walls covered in moss, we are in fact standing where lives were lived fully, where stories unfolded, and where history was quietly written into stone. The silence of the jungle today hides the bustling sound of the past, but if you listen closely, you might still imagine it. The clamp of sandals on limestone roads, the low call of traders advertising their goods, the steady tapping of tools as stones were cut and shaped, the soft hum of voices at dusk when fires were lit and families gathered together to eat and talk. Even the music that filled the plaza's drums with steady beats, flutes echoing through the air, can be imagined if you let the quiet guide your thoughts. One of the most enduring mysteries is how these great cities eventually declined. Some were abandoned suddenly, others more slowly. Climate changes, shifting trade, and internal pressures may have all played roles. But what matters most for us now is not the end, but the life that once filled these places. The Maya did not vanish. Their descendants live on today, carrying forward languages, traditions, and practices that link them directly to those who built the cities of stone. As we settle into this story, let the jungle surround you. Picture the vines hanging, heavy from branches, the sunlight filtering in patches through the canopy, and the ruins resting quietly beneath layers of green. Each stone is a page of history, and each path a memory of footsteps long gone. We are only at the beginning of our exploration. Ahead lie the markets, the observatories, the palaces, and the daily lives of the people who made this civilization thrive. But for now, breathe deeply, listen to the calm rhythm of the forest, and know that you are walking where countless others once walked, across cities that time has hidden but not erased. The story of the Maya is one of endurance and silence, of cities that were never truly lost, but only waiting to be seen again. Tonight we begin that journey slowly, calmly, and step by step through the jungle of forgotten cities, where every stone holds a secret and every shadow carries the memory of lives once lived. If the stone plazas and pyramids were the skeleton of the Maya cities, then the marketplaces were their heartbeat. To walk into one of these open-air centers was to step into a living river of voices, colors, textures, and scents that carried with them the life of the entire civilization. Imagine once more that we leave the quiet jungle path and step instead into the bustle of a Maya city at its height. The sun is warm but not harsh, filtered by drifting clouds. The air feels alive, thick with the smell of maize, roasted cacao, fresh fruits, and woven cotton. The plaza opens before you, wide and welcoming, and immediately you are surrounded by the hum of trade. The Maya marketplace was not simply a place to buy and sell. It was the center of social life, a hub of communication, a place where people from different neighborhoods, different classes, and even different cities came together. Picture stalls made from wooden poles and woven mats, their roofs thatched with palm leaves to provide shade. On the ground, vendors spread colorful textiles, baskets of food, pottery painted with intricate designs, and bundles of tools made from obsidian or jade. The crowd flows between them like water, steady and constant, each person moving with a rhythm that has been repeated for centuries. One of the most striking features of these markets was the form of currency, cacao beans. To the Maya, cacao was more than a drink. It was a measure of value. A handful of beans could buy food, clothing, or tools. Larger purchases required carefully counted amounts, with some goods priced in dozens or even hundreds of beans. Imagine the feel of those small, glossy seeds running through your fingers, each one representing not only a taste of chocolate, but a unit of wealth. Alongside cacao, other items like obsidian blades, jade ornaments, and woven cloths also served as means of exchange depending on the region and the need. As you move deeper into the market, you hear the bargaining. The tone is not harsh but lively, with a rhythm of offers and counter-offers that float like music above the stalls. A farmer proudly displays baskets of maize, their golden kernels shining in the sunlight. Beside him, another offers beans, squash, and peppers. A fisher has brought his catch from the rivers, carefully displayed on leaves to keep them cool. Across the plaza, women offer textiles dyed in deep reds, blues and greens, their patterns telling stories woven into the fabric. Each item is not only useful but carries the imprint of a skilled hand, a connection to a family and a tradition. The markets were also places of sound. Children ran between the stalls, laughing and weaving through the crowd. Musicians sometimes played simple instruments, flutes, rattles, drums, adding a rhythm to the day. Storytellers found eager listeners, sharing news from nearby towns or recounting tales of ancestors. The market was more than commerce. It was community, a gathering that bound together the lives of people across distances. Consider for a moment the journey of some of these goods. Obsidian, sharp and dark, did not come from every region. It was carried from the highlands, sometimes traveling for days or weeks to reach the lowland cities. Jade, prized for its cool green glow, came from river valleys far to the south. Salt, an everyday necessity, was produced in coastal regions and traded inland. Feathers from brilliant birds, scarlet macaws, quetzals, were carried carefully, their colors shining like jewels in the sun. Each item told a story of distance, of effort, of the threads that wove together distant places into a single web of exchange. In this way, the markets of the Maya were not local alone, they were international. By the standards of their time, goods traveled across hundreds of miles, linking coastal villages with mountain towns, river valleys with dense forests. Traders walked along roads of white limestone, their burdens carried on their backs, or guided canoes down slow-moving rivers. Along the way, they rested at way stations, met with other travelers, and exchanged stories. By the time they reached the great markets, their goods carried not only material value, but also the touch of distant lands. But perhaps the most fascinating secret of the marketplaces lies not in what was traded, but in how the Maya conceived of exchange itself. These markets were organized with spaces set aside for specific goods. One area for food, another for tools, another for clothing, another for animals. The result was order within the bustle, a pattern that allowed even large crowds to move with ease. There were officials, too, who oversaw the transactions, ensuring fairness and maintaining peace. The marketplace was not a place of chaos, but of structure, a reflection of the Maya sense of balance and harmony. As the day wore on, the atmosphere shifted. Morning was often busiest, with traders setting out their goods early and buyers arriving, while the air was still cool. By midday, the sun pressed heavily on the plaza, and people sought shade beneath the thatched roofs of stalls or rested with cups of cacao drink. Conversations drifted lazily, bargains were concluded with handshakes, and the crowd thinned slightly as some returned home with their purchases. Yet the market never fully quieted. In the late afternoon, new energy rose as fresh waves of visitors arrived, carrying news or goods from other regions. The market was a constant flow, rising and falling like the tide, but never entirely still. For a visitor, the experience was overwhelming in its richness. The sight of pottery painted with swirling designs, the feel of cotton cloth smooth against the skin, the taste of roasted maize warm in the hand, the smell of cacao rich and slightly bitter, the sound of bargaining and laughter. All senses were engaged, weaving together into a memory that lingered long after leaving the plaza. The significance of these markets cannot be overstated. They were the engines of the Maya economy, the centers of culture, and the threads that tied together city and countryside, ruler and farmer, artisan and trader. To walk through one was to walk through the very heart of the civilization. And yet, like the cities themselves, many of these marketplaces now lie silent. The plazas remain, but the voices are gone. The stones still outline the spaces where vendors once sat, but the goods have long since disappeared. Still, if you pause and listen, the echoes are there. The hum of conversation carried on the wind, the faint sound of children laughing, the rustle of cloth being unfolded, the imagined clink of cacao beans being counted out carefully into another's. Hand dot as the sun sets on the marketplace, shadows stretch across the plaza. Fires are lit for evening meals, and the day's trade draws to a close. Families gather their goods, carefully counting what remains, while buyers carry their purchases home. The air grows cooler, and the voices soften into the calm rhythm of night. Above, the first stars begin to appear, watched carefully by those who knew their patterns well. Tomorrow the market will return alive once more, as it has been for centuries. As you rest in the quiet of the evening, picture yourself sitting at the edge of that plaza, listening to the calm murmur fade into night. The fireflies drift through the air, and the stars shimmer faintly above. The marketplace has ended, but its heartbeat remains, echoing softly through the centuries. The stars have always guided people, long before compasses or clocks, before printed calendars or glowing screens. Human eyes lifted to the night sky and searched for meaning in its slow, patient movements. For the Maya, the sky was more than a canvas of stars. It was the great clock of the world, a map stretched across eternity, and within its patterns lay the rhythm of daily life. To walk quietly into a Maya city at night was to enter a place where the heavens above were watched with care, where every rising star, every passing moon, and every shadow cast by the sun carried weight and significance. Imagine standing in a plaza as dusk settles. The air is warm, but the heat of the day is fading. Around you, the noises of the market have softened. Fires are being lit in homes, voices are quieting, and the city is preparing for night. Then, as the sky deepens into blue and the first stars appear, a new kind of life begins. High above the plaza, atop the steep steps of an observatory, Maya, astronomers climb into position. They do not bring telescopes, for none were needed. Instead, they bring their eyes, their memory, and the knowledge passed down across generations. The Maya were among the most skilled sky watchers the world has ever known. With simple sight lines marked on buildings, with windows cut precisely into stone walls, and with carefully aligned temples, they tracked the cycles of the sun, moon, and planets with astonishing accuracy. Each observation was noted, each pattern remembered, until they could predict eclipses, calculate the length of a solar year, and chart the path of Venus across the heavens. It is said that their calculations of the year's length were more accurate than those of many later calendars that spread across Europe. That picture the patience this required. Night after night, year after year, generation after generation, astronomers lifted their gaze to the same sky. They marked when the sun cast shadows at particular points on stone stairways. They recorded how the moon's shape shifted slowly from crescent to full, then faded again. They tracked the wandering lights of planets, bright Venus, steady Jupiter, distant Saturn moving across the background of stars. To them, the sky was not random. It was a rhythm, steady and eternal, and through it they understood when to plant maize, when to harvest, when to gather for ceremonies, when to rest, and when to prepare. The Maya did not have a single calendar, but many. Each had its purpose. The most well-known is the Hab, a solar calendar of 365 days, divided into 18 months of 20 days each, plus a short month of 5 days at the end. This was the calendar of the seasons, guiding agriculture and the cycle of work. Alongside it was the Sokan, a sacred cycle of 260 days, made from the combination of 20 day names and 13 numbers, creating a repeating pattern of time that structured ritual and daily life. These two calendars worked together, meshing like gears in a great machine, producing cycles that repeated only once every 52 years. For the Maya, this was not a coincidence. It was the Great Calendar Round, a cycle that marked the passing of generations. But the Maya did not stop there. They also created the long count, a system of counting days from a fixed starting point far in the past. With it, they could mark events not only in the cycle of years but across centuries, stretching back into history and forward into the future. To stand before a carved stela in a Maya city was to see this system in stone, rows of glyphs that marked not only the deeds of rulers, but the very date on which they occurred, fixed precisely in the flow of time. Consider the effort of carving these glyphs. Stonecutters worked patiently, chiseling symbols that represented not just words but numbers, each dot and bar carrying meaning. A single dot stood for 1, a bar for 5, and with these, the Maya created a vigesimal system based on 20s. Far different from the 10s we use today, this allowed them to record numbers of incredible size, enough to track days across thousands of years. In this, they were not simply keeping a record of time. They were binding human life to the rhythm of the cosmos itself. The observatories of the Maya were not like the domes we know today. They were often tall, round towers or rectangular buildings with narrow windows cut into their walls. Each opening was aligned with care, pointing to the horizon where the sun rose or set at particular times of the year. At Izmal, at Chishan, Itza, at Kopan, and many other sites, such structures still stand, silent now but once filled with the quiet concentration of astronomers watching the sky. Imagine them standing in the darkness, waiting for the first glimmer of Venus to rise before dawn, marking its place with strings stretched across sight lines, or noting where the sun touched the horizon at the equinox. These were not random observations. They were part of a system, a science carried out with devotion and precision. Why Venus? Because to the Maya, Venus was a planet of great significance. Its cycles were carefully tracked, and its appearances and disappearances were tied to importance. Events. The movement of Venus was recorded in codices, painted books of bark paper covered with glyphs and illustrations. These books contained tables predicting its path, accurate for years to come. Imagine the skill this required to watch the sky for decades, noting each rising, each setting, until patterns emerged that could be calculated and predicted. This was not guesswork. It was science carried out by people who trusted their eyes, their memory, and their commitment to precision. The nights of the Maya world were not filled with artificial lights. Cities slept in darkness, lit only by fires, torches, and the glow of the stars above. This made the sky even clearer, its patterns more vivid, its movements more obvious. For people whose lives depended on understanding the seasons, the sky was not distant or abstract. It was immediate, practical, and essential. To know when the rains would come, when the maize should be planted, when to prepare for harvest, these were questions of survival, and the answers lay in the heavens dot as you walk with me through this chapter. Imagine lying on your back in a plaza, the stones still warm from the day's sun, looking up at the stars as the Maya once did. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like a river of light. Constellations appear, though not the same ones you may know, for the Maya saw different patterns in the stars. You hear nothing but the soft sounds of the night and owl's call, the hum of insects, the rustle of leaves, and above it all, the silence of the universe, patient and vast. In that silence, the Maya found structure, cycles, and meaning. Their mastery of time was not only for practical purposes. It gave their lives rhythm. Birthdays, marriages, planting seasons, building projects, all could be marked within the cycles of their calendars. Time was not simply passing. It was structured, layered, and woven into the fabric of their civilization. To live as a Maya was to live within a world where every day had meaning, not just as a date, but as part of a greater cycle connected to the movements of the stars and the turning of the heavens. And so, when you visit the ruins today and see the observatories, the carved stelae, and the scattered glyphs, you are not only looking at stone, you are looking at the remnants of a civilization that understood time with a depth and accuracy that still amazes scholars. You are standing where astronomers once stood, where they gazed at the stars with patience and care, where they recorded their observations in books and in stone, and where they built a system of calendars that connected human life to the eternal dance of the cosmos dot. Let the calm of this thought settle on you now. Close your eyes and imagine the stars above, slow and steady, unchanging in their cycles. Imagine the quiet figures of astronomers wrapped in simple cloth, waiting for the moment when Venus rises or the sun sets. Imagine the scratch of brush on bark paper as they record their observations, the chisel striking stone as they carve dates that will outlast their own lives. And imagine the sense of peace they must have felt, knowing that their world was not random but ordered. That time itself had a rhythm, and that they were its keepers dot as the night deepens, the city grows quiet. Fires burn low, voices fade, and only the astronomers remain awake, watching, recording, remembering. The sky continues its eternal movement, and with it, the heartbeat of the Maya world. In this we find not only history but calm, a reminder that even in our own time, the stars still shine with the same steady light, patient, eternal, and waiting for us to look up. To understand the Maya world, we must step not only into the bustling marketplaces or the silent observatories, but also into the shaded courtyards of their palaces, where power was woven in threads both delicate and strong. These were not courts of glittering gold and endless luxury as some might imagine, but rather centers of influence where rulers, nobles, and their allies shaped the destiny of entire cities. To walk into a Maya court was to enter a world where every gesture mattered, where alliances were sealed with careful words, and where politics moved as quietly and steadily as the rivers that carved through the forest. Imagine the palace rising. Before you, its walls are made of cut stone, not soaring to impossible heights but wide and sprawling, with rooms arranged around inner courtyards. In the heat of the day, shadows fall cool across the plastered floors, and breezes drift through open doorways. The walls may once have been painted in reds, blues, and yellows, their colors fading now but vivid in their time. The palace is not a single towering structure, but a complex halls for audiences, chambers for the ruler and family, rooms for scribes and attendants, storage spaces, stairways that lead to terraces where the city can be viewed from above. Heart of the palace is the ruler, known as the Ke-Ul-Ajal, the Holy Lord, though here we will think of him simply as the king. Around him gather nobles, advisors, warriors, scribes, and envoys. The air is not loud with shouting. It is hushed, controlled, with voices low but firm. The Maya court was a place of ceremony as much as politics, where appearance mattered as much as action. Every meeting, every council, every gathering carried layers of meaning, like the carved glyphs that lined palace walls. Picture a morning at court. The sun rises, casting long beams of light across the plaza outside. Within the palace, nobles, a symbol. They wear cotton garments embroidered with patterns, feathers arranged in headdresses, jade beads strung carefully at necks and wrists. The ruler takes his place on a carved throne, not towering but elevated, a symbol of his position. He does not speak immediately. His silence is a tool, commanding respect, making each word that follows weigh heavier. Around him, scribes prepare, their bark paper codices and painted vases, ready to record what is said, for memory is power, and writing makes memory endure. The matters discussed are varied. Tribute from neighboring towns must be counted baskets of maize, bundles of cloth, obsidian blades, or cacao beans. Alliances with other cities must be negotiated. Sometimes marriages are arranged, not for love, but for the weaving of ties between dynasties. Envoys from distant lands may arrive, carrying gifts of feathers or salt, their presence both a gesture of respect and a reminder of connection. Each conversation is layered, each agreement carefully shaped, for in a world of many city-states, survival depends on diplomacy as much as strength. Yet beneath the calm exterior, there is tension. Rival cities watch each other closely. A misstep in words could spark conflict. A broken alliance could lead to war. The ruler must balance firmness with subtlety, projecting authority while maintaining trust. His advisors, too, play their part, whispering strategies, recalling past agreements, warning of potential dangers. To be a ruler in the Maya world was not to sit in endless ease. It was to walk a narrow path, balancing power, loyalty, and the shifting currents of politics. And yet, the palace was not only a place of politics, it was also a home. Within its walls lived families, children running through shaded corridors, women weaving cloth in quiet rooms, attendants preparing meals or arranging gatherings. The life of the court was both grand and ordinary, both a stage of politics and a household of daily tasks. Fires burned in kitchens, laughter echoed from courtyards, footsteps tapped along stone stairways. The palace was alive, not just with rulers and nobles, but with the hum of everyday existence. There were also scribes and artists working within the court to preserve memory. They painted scenes on walls and vases, showing rulers seated in majesty, recording alliances and victories, depicting ceremonies with careful detail. Their art was not for decoration alone, it was history, meant to remind future generations of the deeds of their leaders. Imagine one such artist at work, dipping a brush into pigment, carefully painting a feathered headdress or the line of a jade necklace, each stroke carrying weight. Through these images, the ruler's power extended beyond his lifetime, fixed in the colors of plaster and clay. But politics is never still. In these courts, plots were whispered, secrets shared. Nobles who smiled by day might scheme by night, building alliances of their own, waiting for the moment when power shifted. Scribes recorded carefully, but sometimes what was left unrecorded mattered just as much as what was written. The Maya courts, like those of any great civilization, were theaters of ambition, where people sought to rise, to influence, to secure their place in the story. Yet the strength of these courts lay not only in the ruler's power, but in the belief of the people. To the farmer bringing maize as tribute, to the artisan weaving cloth for palace use, to the trader delivering obsidian blades for noble warriors, the court was both distant and present. Its decisions shaped their lives, yet its grandeur seemed set apart from their daily struggles. Still, when they looked up at the palace rising above the plaza, they saw a symbol of stability, of order, of continuity. The palace was not only stone, it was authority, embodied an enduring dot. As evening falls, the palace changes. Torches are lit, their flames flickering across stone walls. Nobles gather once more, perhaps for a feast or a council at night. Musicians play softly, drums echoing gently, flutes adding calm notes to the air. Food is shared: maize tamales, beans, roasted turkey, cacao drink. Conversations flow more freely, though still with care, for even in moments of leisure, politics never fully sleeps. The ruler listens, speaks little, but his presence shapes the room. Around him, laughter mixes with low voices, a balance of pleasure and strategy. When night deepens and the torches burn low, the palace grows quieter. Attendants withdraw, nobles depart, and the ruler retires to his private chambers. Outside, the city rests under the stars, its houses dark, its plazas empty. But within the palace walls, power continues its silent work, plans forming in the minds of rulers and advisors, shaping the future of the city and its people. To walk through these courts now, centuries later, is to find silence where once there was life. The walls stand, but their colors have faded. The courtyards are empty, their stones warmed only by the sun. Yet if you pause, you may still sense the weight of decisions made here, the echo of footsteps on stone floors, the whisper of voices shaping alliances. The palace remains not only as a ruin of stone, but as a memory of power, of politics, of human ambition. Quiet now, but once alive with purpose. In the calm of the night, As we step out of the palace and into the darkened plaza, we carry with us an understanding that power in the Maya world was not only force of arms, but the subtle art of words, the careful weaving of alliances, the steady presence of courts that bound together city and people. If the palaces and observatories of the Maya tell the story of power and knowledge, then the homes and fields tell the story of life itself. To truly understand this civilization, we must step not only into the courts of rulers, but also into the quiet villages and neighborhoods where families lived, worked, and dreamed. Here, among the simple houses of thatch and mud, the heartbeat of the Maya world was steady and strong. Picture dawn in a Maya settlement. The sky is still pale, the air cool before the heat of the day rises. A soft mist clings to the trees, and the call of birds echoes through the forest. In small houses clustered together, families stir awake. The houses are modest, built with walls of wattle and daub, their roofs covered in palm thatch. Inside, mats are rolled aside, and the day begins. Smoke curls upward as fires are lit, the smell of wood and maize drifting into the air. Mothers grind maize on stone metates, the rhythmic sound of stone against stone, marking the start of morning. The result is masa, the dough that forms the basis of tortillas and tamales, simple foods that sustained generations. Children wake slowly, rubbing sleep from their eyes, already eager to chase one another outside. Their laughter fills the air, bright and sharp against the quiet of morning. Fathers prepare for the day's labor, some taking tools to the fields, others readying goods for market. The hum of life grows steadily as the sun climbs, and soon the settlement is alive with sound the pounding of maize, the low voices of conversation, the footsteps of people beginning their work. The Maya world was deeply agricultural. Maize was the heart of life, not only of food, but the foundation of survival. Fields were cleared carefully, often using slash and burn techniques to prepare the soil. Farmers planted maize alongside beans and squash, crops that supported one another in growth. In the early morning, men walked these fields, carrying stone tools, digging sticks, or simple hoes. The work was hard, the sun unrelenting, but it was steady, and it tied families to the land in a rhythm as old as time. While men worked in the fields, women tended the home. They ground maize, prepared food, wove cotton into cloth, cared for children, and managed the rhythm of the household. Their weaving was not only practical but beautiful, with patterns and colors that carried meaning and identity. To watch a woman at her loom was to see patience embodied, each thread carefully placed, each pattern growing slowly into something whole. These textiles clothed families, served as trade goods, and wrapped newborns in warmth. In this quiet labor lay both art and survival. Children, too, had their place. From a young age, they learned the tasks of their parents. Boys followed fathers into the fields, carrying small tools, learning how to plant and harvest. Girls stayed close to mothers, watching, imitating, helping to grind maize or fetch water. But there was time for play as well. Children chased one. Another through the village played simple games with balls or stones, splashed in rivers, and laughed freely. Their joy echoed against the steady labor of adults, a reminder that even in the midst of survival, there was life's simple happiness in the cities. Daily life was more complex but followed the same rhythms. Artisans shaped pottery, their hands, steady as they turned clay into bowls, vases, and plates. Painters added designs, spirals, glyphs, figures of animals and people transforming simple vessels into art. Stonecutters chipped carefully at limestone, creating blocks for buildings, or carving glyphs into stele. Jewelers worked jade into beads and pendants, polishing the cool green stone until it gleamed. Each craft required skill and patience, passed from parent to child, apprentice to master. Generation to generation, traders prepared for journeys, loading goods into bundles to carry on their backs or place in canoes. Some traveled only to nearby markets. Others walked for days, linking distant towns through networks of exchange. They carried salt, cacao, obsidian, cloth, feathers, and countless other goods. Along the way, they met other travelers, rested at way stations, and brought not only goods, but news connecting the Maya world through both commerce and conversation. As midday arrived, the sun grew strong. Fields shimmered in the heat, and families sought shade. Meals were simple but nourishing tortillas filled with beans or squash, sometimes with peppers for flavor. In wealthier homes, turkey or fish might be added, or cacao drink prepared with care. Families gathered together, sharing food and conversation, resting before returning to work. The rhythm of the day was steady, marked by labor but softened by community. Afternoons carried the same steady hum. Farmers continued in their fields, artisans at their work, women weaving or preparing food. Children played in the shade, sometimes helping, sometimes inventing games of their own. The city streets filled with movement traders arriving, neighbors, visiting one another, messengers carrying words from rulers. The world of the Maya was alive, not with constant noise, but with steady activity, each task building into the whole of civilization. As evening approached, the tone shifted. The sun sank lower, casting golden light across the fields and houses. Farmers returned from their labor, carrying what they had harvested. Fires were lit once more, and the smell of roasting food filled the air. Families gathered, the day's work behind them, sharing meals and stories. Children drowsed at their mothers' sides, their energy finally fading with the light. Neighbors visited one another, voices low, laughter rising in bursts, a sense of calm settling across the settlement. Night brought peace. The stars shone. Above, bright and steady in the dark sky, families lay down on mats, resting after a long day. The hum of insects filled the air, the distant calls of animals echoed through the forest, and the world seemed both vast and intimate. Life was not easy, but it was steady, bound by rhythms that gave it meaning. Each day was similar, yet each was unique, carrying its own stories, its own laughter, its own quiet moments. And so the daily lives of the Maya people unfold, and not in grandeur alone, but in the simple, enduring tasks that sustained them. To grind maize, to weave cloth, to plant fields, to raise children. These were the acts that built a civilization as surely as stone walls and towering pyramids. The greatness of the Maya did not rest only in their rulers or their astronomers, but in the countless families who lived quietly, worked patiently, and passed their knowledge to those who came after. When we walk among the ruins today, it is easy to be struck by the towering pyramids and grand plazas, but beneath those stones lies the memory of these daily lives, the heartbeat of ordinary people who made the extraordinary possible. Their voices may be gone, but their presence remains in every carved glyph, every broken pot, every stone foundation of a home. To remember them is to remember that history is not only made by rulers, but by the countless hands of those who lived, worked, and dreamed in the quiet rhythm of everyday life. Walk quietly into a Maya city and let your eyes wander across its plazas and temples. At first, the stone seems silent pyramids rising with sharp angles, walls standing in the sunlight, stairways climbing toward the sky. But look closer, and you begin to notice shapes etched into the surfaces, curling lines, squares and circles, faces, animals, patterns that at first seemed decorative, but soon reveal themselves to be something more. These are glyphs, the writing of the Maya carved patiently into stone, painted onto walls, drawn into bark paper books. And through them the Maya spoke across centuries, leaving behind not only records, but secrets waiting to be understood. The Maya script is among the most complex writing systems ever developed in the pre-modern world. It is not an alphabet in the sense we know, nor a simple set of pictures. It is a system of logograms and syllabic signs, where each symbol might stand for a sound, a word, or an entire idea. Imagine a page filled with dozens of these glyphs, arranged in neat columns, each one a small work of art, yet together forming sentences, stories, histories. To carve or paint them required skill not only as an artist, but as a writer, someone who knew the meaning of hundreds upon hundreds of signs, and who could shape them into messages that carried both beauty and knowledge. The secrets carved in two. Stone were often placed on steely tall upright slabs set in plazas or near temples. These stelae stood like silent storytellers, covered in glyphs that recorded the deeds of rulers, the dates of important events, the connections between dynasties. Walk up to one, and you see not only the writing but also the carved figure of a king or queen, standing in elaborate dress, wearing headdresses of feathers and jade, holding symbols of power. Around them, the glyphs flow like a river of words, anchoring their image in time. Even after centuries of weather, many of these carvings remain clear, their lines sharp, their stories still present for those who can read them. Imagine the work it took to carve such a monument. A stonecutter stands before the blank surface, chisel in hand. The ruler has commanded that a record be made of victory in battle, a marriage alliance, the completion of a temple. Scribes prepare the design, laying out the glyphs in careful order. Then the carver begins, striking patiently, each line precise. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, as the surface fills with symbols. When complete, the stela stands not only as stone, but as memory, as a declaration that this event happened, that it mattered, that it will not be forgotten. But the glyphs were not only carved in stone, they were also painted in codices, books made of bark paper, folded like screens, covered in vibrant colors. Only a few of these codices have survived, for time, humidity, and human destruction consumed most of them. Yet the ones that remain reveal charts of the movements of planets, lists of rituals, calendars of days. To open one is to step directly into the mind of a Maya scribe to see how they organized the knowledge, how they understood the cycles of the world. The pages are filled with gods and animals, with numbers and glyphs, with patterns that seem both strange and familiar. These books were not for entertainment, but for guidance, for preserving the deep knowledge of the civilization. The glyphs carried secrets not only of kings, but of time itself. Dates are written with astonishing precision, counting the days from far in the past, anchoring events within the great flow of the long count. To read such a date is to be told not only what happened, but exactly when, down to the very day. It is as if the Maya wanted their history to be eternal, to stretch across centuries without losing its place. In this, their stones became anchors of memory, fixed in ways that oral stories alone could not achieve. Consider the artistry of these glyphs. Each is more than a symbol, it is a picture. A glyph, a ruler's name, might include the head of an animal, a curling pattern of hair, a hand holding an object. Numbers are dots and bars arranged neatly. Words flow together, not in lines from left to right, but in paired columns, read in a pattern unique to their culture. To the untrained eye, it may look like decoration, but to those who understood, it was language, alive and precise. For centuries, the meaning of these glyphs was hidden. When explorers first saw them, they could not understand. Some thought they were pictures alone, not writing. Others guessed at meanings, but the system resisted easy answers. It was only in recent decades that scholars slowly unraveled the code. Piece by piece, until now we can read much of what the Maya once wrote. Imagine the moment when a scholar first realized that a line of glyphs was not just an image but a date, and that another was a name, and that suddenly the stones were not silent but speaking once more. The secrets revealed were profound. We learned of dynasties stretching back centuries, of wars fought and alliances made, of rulers ascending to power and passing it to their heirs. We learned of rituals, of dedication ceremonies, of the ways in which rulers tied their reins to the cycles of the heavens. The stones told stories not only of glory, but of struggle, cities rising and falling, rivalries lasting for generations. The Maya world, once thought mysterious and silent, began to speak in its own words. Yet even now, not all is understood. Many glyphs remain uncertain, their meanings debated. Some texts are damaged, their edges broken, their surfaces eroded by time. Others are incomplete, leaving gaps that invite questions. The stones still hold secrets, their voices not fully recovered, their stories still waiting for patient eyes and careful minds. In this way, the Maya remain both known and unknown, their civilization revealed and yet still partly hidden, like their cities under the jungle canopy. Walk through a Maya site today, and you will find these stones standing quietly. Sunlight falls across their surfaces. Shadows emphasize their carved lines. Birds rest atop them. Vines creep along their bases, but the glyphs endure. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear the chisel striking, the voices of scribes reading. Aloud, the presence of rulers standing proudly as their deeds were recorded. The stones are silent now, but they once spoke loudly, and in their silence, they invite us to listen more closely. There is something calming in this thought that across centuries, across loss and silence, the Maya still speak through stone. Their words are patient, waiting. Their symbols endure, carved with care and with the certainty that someone someday would read them again. And as we stand before these monuments, we become part of that long chain of listeners, drawn quietly into the secrets carved in stone. Step into the clearing of a Maya city in its prime, and the world around you feels alive with a rhythm unlike any other. The plazas stretch wide and gleaming in the sun, paved with stone and surrounded by temples and palaces. The pyramids rise, so high they seem to touch the clouds, their stairways busy with priests, nobles, and messengers. Markets hum with conversation, laughter, and the steady clink of cacao beans being counted. Everywhere, life is moving, farmers arriving with baskets of food, artisans displaying their crafts, envoys from distant towns bringing gifts and news. These cities were more than homes. They were the hearts of kingdoms, centers of power and culture that pulsed with energy. To walk through Tikal, Kalakmal, or Palenque at their height was to enter a place of astonishing complexity. Roads of white limestone stretched out like glowing ribbons into the forest, linking neighborhoods and distant towns. Water was collected in vast reservoirs, carefully engineered to sustain thousands, even during dry seasons. Temples stood as mountains of stone aligned with the heavens, their stairways lined with carved stelae that told the stories of rulers and dynasties. Palaces opened into courtyards where decisions shaped the future. Even the houses of common families clustered, neatly ordered within the city's plan. Nothing here was random. Everything was deliberate, a reflection of minds that understood both the needs of people and the patterns of the cosmos. The rise of these cities did not happen overnight. Generations worked patiently, quarrying stone, carrying it block by block, raising walls and stairways. Farmers in the countryside grew the maize and beans that fed the builders. Traders carried in goods from distant regions. Artisans shaped the tools and ornaments that marked each milestone. Slowly, steadily, the cities grew, their plazas widening, their temples climbing higher, their populations swelling. Each new ruler added something of his own, a temple here, a palace wing there, layer upon layer, until the city became both a home and a monument to human endurance. Imagine the feeling of living in such a place. Each morning you step into a plaza filled with color-painted walls, woven textiles, feathers of brilliant birds. The air is alive with sound drums beating softly, flutes carrying melodies, voices rising in greeting. At night, the torches glow and the stars shine above, watched carefully by astronomers. Festivals fill the plazas with dancing and music, markets with abundance. To live here is to feel part of something vast, to know that your city is not only a home but a symbol of greatness. And yet, as we know from the silence of the ruins today, this greatness did not last forever. Slowly, quietly, the rhythm began to change. At first, perhaps it was barely noticeable. A harvest not as strong as before, a reservoir running lower in the dry season, traders arriving with fewer goods, or with troubling news from rival cities. Then, over time, the signs grew heavier. Droughts pressed harder, and the land could not feed the growing populations. Wars between rival kingdoms strained resources, and once thriving alliances crumbled. The burden of supporting grand temples and endless ceremonies weighed on farmers who struggled to provide enough maize for both their families and their rulers. The fall of these cities was not a single moment, but a long fading, like a fire burning, lower and lower until only embers remain. People began to leave. Perhaps some sought better land, perhaps others moved to safer places far from conflict. Slowly the plazas emptied. The markets grew quieter. The stairways of the temples, once worn smooth by countless feet, grew dusty and still. Jungle vines crept closer, patient and relentless, weaving their green fingers through cracks in the stone. Roofs collapsed, walls tumbled, and the once proud cities surrendered to silence. Imagine walking through one of these cities during its decline. The plaza is no longer filled with voices. A few traders still linger, their stalls smaller than before. Families speak in hushed tones, worried about the future. Nobles debate in the palaces, their words edged with tension. The air feels heavier, the certainty of greatness giving way to unease. Yet even as the decline deepens, life continues. Farmers still plant maize, children still laugh, artisans still shape clay into pots. The city does not vanish overnight. It breathes slower, weaker, until one day it no longer breathes at all. Centuries later, the jungle would cover what remained. Trees grew where plazas once stood, their roots pushing into cracks, breaking stones apart. Birds nested in temples, vines draped across walls, animals made their homes where rulers once held court. To those who stumbled upon them, the ruins seemed swallowed by nature, as if the cities had been forgotten. But the truth is gentler. They were not destroyed in a single catastrophe, but slowly left behind, their people moving on, their stones remaining as memories dot. And so today, when we walk among these ruins, we see both their rise and their fall. We see the grandeur of their pyramids, the patience of their builders, the brilliance of their planners. We also feel the silence, the absence of the people who once filled these spaces. The stones remain, but the voices are gone, leaving behind a calm that is both peaceful and haunting. Yet in this silence there is also endurance. The cities may have fallen, but their memory has not. Their stones still tell stories. Their glyphs still record history. Their descendants still live in the lands their ancestors once ruled. The Maya world did not vanish. It transformed, its greatness carried forward in new ways. And as we rest in the shadow of their ruins, we are reminded that all cities, no matter how grand, rise and fall in time, that the memory of human effort endures. So breathe deeply and imagine it once more. A city at its height, alive with sound and color. A city in its decline, quiet and heavy. A city today, covered in vines, silent but present. The rise and fall of great cities is not only the story of the Maya, it is the story of all civilizations, a reminder of both our power and our impermanence. And in this calm reflection, we find peace, knowing that history is not lost but carried in the stones, waiting quietly for us to listen. When we think of a civilization, we often picture its cities, grand plazas, tall pyramids, bustling markets. But behind every city's strength lies something less visible, yet even more powerful, the roots that connect it to the rest of the world. For the Maya, these trade routes were the veins through which lifeblood flowed. They stretched across forests, mountains, rivers, and coastlines, carrying not only goods, but ideas, news, and connections. To follow these routes is to walk with the traders, to see the world as they saw it, step by steady step, bundle by bundle, canoe by canoe. Imagine the morning light breaking over the dense rainforest. The mist lingers low, the air thick with the smell of damp leaves. From the edge of a Maya city, a small group of traders sets out. Each carries a wooden frame strapped to the back, bundles tied carefully. Inside are cacao beans, salt, obsidian, blades, cotton textiles, perhaps bright feathers from distant lands. They wear simple cotton tunics, their feet wrapped in sandals, their faces calm with determination. The path before them is narrow, worn by countless feet, stretching into the distance beneath the shadow of trees. Their journey will take days, perhaps weeks, but they walk with steady rhythm, for they are not only carrying goods, they are carrying the threads that weave cities into a single world. The Maya had no beasts of burden, no horses or oxen pulled carts along their roads. Instead, the traders themselves bore the weight, lifting bundles across their shoulders, balancing them carefully as they moved. This might seem a hardship, but it was also a rhythm of life. Each step was measured, each path known by memory. The roads they followed, called sakbib, were more than dirt tracks. Many were carefully constructed causeways, paved with white limestone, raised above the forest floor. By moonlight, these roads glowed softly, guiding travelers even in the darkness. To walk them at night was to follow silver ribbons stretching into the distance, quiet beneath the stars. But not all travel was by land. Where rivers cut through the forest, canoes slipped silently across the water, long and narrow, carved from single tree trunks. They carried not only people, but heavy loads of salt, maize, or pottery. On calm mornings, the water reflected the sky, and paddles dipped gently, leaving ripples that spread outward. Traders guided their canoes with skill, avoiding rocks, steering through currents, resting in shaded banks when the sun grew strong. Rivers were highways, connecting inland cities with coastal ports, carrying goods from mountains to sea dot, and then there was the sea itself. Along the Korean coast, Maya traders sailed canoes across blue waters, hugging the shoreline or venturing farther into the waves. They carried obsidian from the highlands, jade from river valleys, cacao from forests, and exchanged them for shells, salt, and other goods. Picture a line of canoes gliding across the water, their paddlers moving in unison, the sea stretching endlessly around them. To sail here was to connect not only cities but entire regions, linking the Maya world with distant peoples beyond their borders. What goods traveled along these routes? Nearly everything that sustained daily life and marked status. Cacao beans, small and dark, served as currency and as the basis for a drink prized by nobles. Salt harvested from coastal flats or boiled from brine was essential for preserving food and flavoring meals. Obsidian, sharp as glass, came from volcanic highlands, shaped into blades, knives, and tools. Jade, cool and green, was carved into beads, pendants, and masks, symbols of wealth and beauty. Feathers of brilliant birds, scarlet macaws, quetzals were carried carefully, their colors glowing in the sun, used to decorate headdresses and garments. Cotton cloth, woven and dyed, provided clothing and trade value. Even everyday goods, like pottery, honey, and tools, traveled along these networks, connecting farmer and noble alike. Yet trade was not only about objects. It was also about ideas. As traders walked or paddled from one city to another, they carried stories, news, and customs. A tale from one kingdom could reach another within weeks. Styles of pottery, patterns of textiles, even ways of speaking spread along these routes. In this way, trade was a form of communication, a thread weaving together not only goods, but the thoughts and identities of a civilization. Imagine resting with these traders at night. They stop at a way station, perhaps a small settlement along the road, where fires are lit and food is shared. Tortillas are warmed, beans cooked, cacasso prepared. They set down their bundles, their shoulders aching from the day's burden, and sit quietly by the fire. The forest hums with insects, owls call from the trees, and the stars shine above. They speak in low voices, sharing news from the city they left, wondering what awaits in the city ahead. The fire crackles, and in its glow their faces are calm. Their lives simple but essential. Without them, the great cities would not thrive, for it is they who keep the lifeblood flowing. The roots themselves were marvels of endurance. Some cut straight through thick forest, others climbed rocky hills, others followed rivers that wound endlessly. Each path required knowledge, where water could be found, where dangers lurked, where to rest safely. For centuries these paths were walked and remembered, their patterns etched into the land. Even today, some of these ancient roads remain, their limestone still visible beneath the forest floor, a reminder of the countless feet that once pressed upon them. As the cities rose, trade routes grew busier. Envoys traveled with escorts, nobles sent gifts to one another, rulers demanded tribute delivered along these paths. Markets swelled with goods from faraway lands, filling plazas with colors and scents. The trade routes were not silent. They were filled with voices, footsteps, the creak of wood, the splash of paddles, the hum of human movement. Through them, the Maya world was not a collection of isolated cities, but a single vast network, alive and connected. But just as cities rose and fell, so too did the trade routes. When droughts struck, rivers ran low, and travel became harder. When wars flared, roads became dangerous, guarded by rival kingdoms. Traders faced risks not only from the forest itself, but from ambushes, from shifting alliances, from the instability of a world in decline. As cities weakened, the routes grew quieter. Canoes no longer carried heavy loads, causeways no longer echoed with footsteps. The lifeblood slowed, and with it the strength of the Maya world faded. Still, the memory of these routes endures. Walk the forest today, and you may stumble upon a raised path, white stones peeking through roots and leaves. Follow it, and it leads you into the past, to plazas now silent, to cities once alive. Stand by a river, and you can imagine the canoes gliding, their paddles dipping in rhythm. Look out across the sea, and you can almost see the line of boats, moving along the horizon, carrying goods and stories to distant lands. The routes remain, not in use but in memory, etched into the land and into history. There is peace in this thought, that beneath the silence of the jungle, the paths still lie, waiting. The stones remember the footsteps, the rivers remember the chi somdajar. Paddles, the sea remembers the canoes. The trade routes, like the cities they connected, rose and fell, but they are not gone. They are part of the quiet story that lingers in the land, patient and enduring. So breathe deeply and picture it once more. A trader stepping onto a limestone road, his bundle heavy but steady. A canoe gliding across a river, its paddlers moving in calm rhythm. A market filling with goods from distant lands, the air alive with voices. This is the heartbeat of connection, the quiet strength of trade. And even now, long after the markets have faded and the cities have emptied, those roots still whisper their secrets, carrying us gently into the vast and calm memory of the Maya world. The silence of a Maya city today can feel overwhelming. You walk across plazas where once thousands of feet pressed against stone, yet now there is only the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. You climb stairways worn smooth by generations, yet find yourself alone at the top. You pass through doorways that once opened into vibrant rooms, yet now only shadows wait inside. The greatest mystery of the Maya world is not how they built their cities or how they counted the stars, but why so many of those cities were left behind. The ruins remain, but the voices are gone. And in that absence lies a question that has never been fully answered. For centuries, people have asked, why did the Maya abandon their cities? The truth is both simple and complex, both clear and hidden. There was no single moment, no sudden catastrophe that swept across the entire world. Instead, there were many small shifts, environmental, political, social, that together created a weight too heavy for the cities to carry. And so, one by one, over the course of generations, plazas grew quieter, markets thinned, temples ceased to rise, and people walked away, leaving the jungle to claim what remained. One of the most powerful forces was the environment itself. The Maya depended on the rhythm of rain. Their fields thrived when the rains came in time, when the maize grew tall and strong, when the rivers flowed steadily. But when the rains faltered, life became harder. Scholars studying the land have found evidence of long droughts in the Maya region, periods when rains failed for years at a time. Imagine the fields growing dry, the maize withering, families searching for food, reservoirs shrinking under the sun. In such times, even the most organized city would struggle. Hunger spreads not quickly, but steadily, a quiet erosion of strength. People begin to leave, searching for better land, carrying their children, their memories, their hope. But drought alone cannot explain everything. Even in times of difficulty, people can adapt. The deeper truth may lie in the weight of the cities themselves. As they grew, as rulers demanded more temples, more ceremonies, more tribute, the burden on farmers and common people grew heavier. Each family had to provide food not only for themselves, but for the nobles, the artisans, the rulers. Each harvest supported not only daily life, but also the grandeur of courts and palaces. When the balance tipped too far, when the burden became greater than the reward, resentment and exhaustion may have spread quietly. Like a shadow through the population. Politics, too, played its part. The Maya world was not a single empire, but a web of city-states, each with its own ruler, its own ambitions, its own rivalries. Wars were common, sometimes brief raids, sometimes long conflicts. These wars drained resources, disrupted trade, and left scars on communities. Imagine living in a city under constant threat, where envoys bring news of enemies nearby, where farmers fear to tend fields beyond the walls, where young men are drawn away to fight instead of to plant. In such times, life narrows, hope fades, and families may choose to leave rather than endure. And yet the abandonment was not always sudden. In many cities, the decline stretched over decades, even centuries. Plazas slowly emptied. Buildings fell into disrepair. Families left in small groups, not in panicked flight, but in quiet decisions, one after another. until only a few remained. The jungle crept closer each year, vines weaving through cracks, roots pushing at foundations. Roofs collapsed, walls leaned, plazas filled with soil and leaves. The city did not fall in a day. It faded, step by step, into silence. There is something haunting in this image. Picture a city once filled with music and laughter, children playing in the courtyards, women weaving in the shade, men returning from fields with baskets of maize. Then imagine it decades later, a smaller crowd in the plaza, a market with fewer stalls, the steps of the temple no longer cleaned, moss growing along their edges, the laughter of children fewer, the songs of festivals quieter, and then later still, the plaza empty, the temple stairs overgrown, the houses abandoned, silence filling the spaces once alive. But why did people not return? Why, once rains came again, or once wars ended, were the cities not rebuilt? Perhaps because the world itself had shifted. New centers of power rose in other regions. Families found safety and sustenance elsewhere. Traditions changed, and the old cities no longer held the same meaning. Once abandoned, a city is hard to revive. Its silence deepens, and its stones become part of the forest once more. The greatest mystery, however, is that not all cities fell. Some endured longer than others. Some continued to thrive while neighbors declined. This uneven pattern suggests that abandonment was not the result of one great disaster, but many small ones, striking differently across regions. Drought here, war there, political strife in another. Each city faced its own challenges, and each responded in its own way. Some adapted, others failed, and the balance of the Maya world shifted slowly, but permanently. For those who study the ruins today, the signs of abandonment are everywhere. In one place, a temple left half-finished, its stones waiting to be set. In another, carvings that end abruptly, as if the scribe never returned. In yet another, a reservoir that silted over, no longer maintained. These are not dramatic scenes of destruction, but quiet pauses, moments where life simply stopped and never resumed. The mystery lies not in fire or collapse, but in absence, in the way silence replaced sound, stillness replaced movement. And yet, the people did not vanish. This is perhaps the most important truth. The Maya cities were abandoned, but the Maya themselves endured. Their descendants live today in the same lands, speaking languages descended from the ancient tongue, practicing traditions shaped by centuries of history. They carry with them the memory of ancestors who once built the pyramids, carved the glyphs, watched the stars. To walk among the ruins with them is to see not a vanished civilization, but a living heritage, still alive, still present. Still, for us who stand among the ruins, the question lingers. What was it like for the last families who left? Did they look back at the pyramids rising above the trees, their steps worn by centuries of feet, and feel sorrow? Did they whisper promises to return? Did they carry pieces of stone, fragments of pottery, memories of plazas once alive? We cannot know, but we can imagine the slow, heavy steps of departure, the silence growing behind them, the forest waiting to reclaim the space. The mysteries of abandonment are not only about the past, they are also about us. They remind us of how fragile civilizations can be, how easily greatness can fade, how silence can follow centuries of sound. And yet, they also remind us of endurance, of the way memory lives on, of the way people adapt and continue. The cities were abandoned, but the story was not ended. It continues in the people, in the land, in the stones that remain dot. So walk with me now through an abandoned city. The plaza is empty, the air heavy with humidity. The vines drape across the stairways, roots coil around fallen walls. Birds call. From high branches, insects hum endlessly. Beneath your feet, the stones are warm from the sun, their surfaces cracked but still strong. You pause, listening, and for a moment, you can almost hear the echoes, the murmur of voices, the laughter of children, the rhythm of drums. Then the wind passes, and the echoes fade, leaving only the calm of the forest. This is the mystery of abandonment. Not destruction, not disappearance, but transformation. A civilization shifting, moving, leaving behind stones and silence, carrying its life forward in new ways. The secrets remain in the ruins, but the story lives on in the people. And in this calm reflection, we find both sadness and peace, knowing that what was once alive is never truly gone, but continues quietly, patiently, waiting for us to listen. When you stand in the shadow of a Maya pyramid today, surrounded by jungle and silence, it is easy to think of this civilization as something distant, something lost to time. The plazas are empty, the temples weathered, the glyphs half faded, by centuries of rain and wind. Yet to believe the Maya are gone is to misunderstand what endures. For the true legacy of the Maya is not only in their stones, but in the lives, the languages, the traditions, and the knowledge that continue quietly, patiently, into our present day. The first and most visible legacy lies in the architecture. The pyramids, the temples, the palaces all still stand, centuries after their builders have left. They rise above the jungle canopy, reminders of human endurance, testaments to patience and skill. To climb their steps is to place your feet where thousands once climbed. To stand on their summits is to see the same horizon that ancient astronomers and rulers once gazed upon. These structures were not built to vanish. They were built to endure, and endure they have. Even in ruin, they hold a majesty that speaks across time, but the stones are only the beginning. The glyphs carved upon them remain, a written legacy, as intricate as any produced elsewhere in the ancient world. Though the codices were mostly lost, burned, or decayed, the carvings on stele and walls continue to tell stories. We can read them now, the names of kings, the dates of battles, the dedication of temples, the passing of dynasties. To trace a glyph with your finger is to touch the memory of a scribe who carved it centuries ago, to feel the connection of words that leap across time. The rediscovery of this writing in our own era is itself part of the legacy, reminding us that no voice is ever truly silent, only waiting for someone to listen again. The Maya also left us the gift of time. Their calendars remain a marvel of human understanding. To calculate a solar year so precisely, to track the cycles of Venus with such accuracy, to weave together multiple calendars into a complex system of meaning, these achievements stand as proof of patience, observation, and brilliance. Even today, some Maya communities still keep their traditional calendars, marking days with rituals and celebrations, living within the rhythm of cycles established centuries ago. In this way, the ancient science of the sky continues, alive in daily life. Agriculture, too, is part of their enduring gift. The methods they developed for growing maize, beans, and squash, the ways they managed soil and water, continue to influence farming practices today. Their knowledge of the land was profound, shaped by generations who lived within its cycles. To plant maize in the right season, to understand the value of mixed crops, to build terraces and reservoirs, these were not simple tasks, but carefully learned practices that ensured survival in a challenging environment. Their legacy in food lives on not only in the fields, but also in the kitchens of the modern world, where maize remains central to the diets of millions. The Maya also gave us art that still speaks with beauty and power. Their pottery, painted with intricate designs, tells stories of daily life, of rulers, of gods, of rituals. Their murals, though faded, still shine with color, capturing moments of dance, of ceremony, of celebration. Their sculpture, carved from stone, shows faces and forms with a humanity that reaches across centuries. To look upon these works is to see not only artistic skill, but also the heart of a people who valued beauty, memory, and meaning. And perhaps most importantly, the Maya gave us themselves. Their descendants live today not as shadows of the past, but as vibrant communities across Central America. Millions still speak Maya languages, different branches of a tree that stretches back to antiquity. These languages carry with them ways of seeing the world, patterns of thought shaped by centuries of history, traditions of weaving, of food, of ritual, of storytelling continue, linking present to past. To meet a Maya community today is to realize that the civilization never truly disappeared. It changed. It adapted, but it endures. Their legacy also lies in what they teach us about resilience. The cities may have been abandoned, but the people did not vanish. They moved, they transformed, they found new ways to live. This, too, is part of their story. Civilizations rise and fall, but people endure. Their memory carries forward, sometimes in silence, sometimes in celebration, but always alive. Think, too, of the lessons hidden in their silence. The ruins remind us that greatness does not guarantee permanence, that even the most powerful cities can fade if the balance with nature is lost, if the burden on people grows too heavy, if conflict outpaces cooperation. Yet they also remind use that from silence can come beauty, from ruins can come wonder, and from memory can come wisdom. Walk once more through a Maya site at dusk. The sky glows orange, then deepens into purple, the first stars appearing above. The stones around you are dark, their edges softened by centuries, but they still stand, patient and enduring. You run your hand across a carved wall, feel the grooves of a glyph, and know that someone long ago placed it there with care. You stand atop a pyramid, look across the endless forest, and realize that beneath those trees lie countless more stories, still hidden, waiting to be uncovered. The legacy of the Maya is not only in what we already know, but in what remains to be discovered, in the mysteries still resting quietly beneath roots and soil. Their true gift is continuity. Through stone, through writing, through time, through people, the Maya world lives on. It whispers in the rustle of leaves across ruined plazas. It shines in the green of jade beads and the brilliance of woven cloth. It echoes in the languages still spoken, the traditions still kept. It endures in the stars, which still move as they always have, just as the Maya once observed Dot. So as we close this journey, let us rest in that thought. The Maya are not gone. Their legacy surrounds us in history and culture, in the lives of their descendants, in the stones that stand silently in the forest. Their story is one of brilliance, of endurance, of mystery, and of peace. And in listening to that story, we too become part of their legacy, carrying it forward in memory, in reflection, and in the calm acknowledgement that what was once great can never truly be lost. Breathe deeply now. Imagine the stars above steady and eternal. Imagine the pyramids rising from the jungle, their stones warm in the night air. Imagine the voices of people across centuries, living, working, dreaming. This is the legacy of the Maya, not silence, not loss, but continuity. Ah, civilization that endures, quiet yet unbroken, waiting for us to remember and to listen. And so our journey through the world of the Maya draws to a gentle close. We have walked the shaded paths of their forgotten cities, stood in the quiet marketplaces where cacao beans once changed hands, and watched the skies through the patient eyes of their astronomers. We have entered the palaces where rulers shaped destinies, shared in the simple routines of families rising with the dawn, and traced the glyphs carved into stone by scribes who wrote for eternity. We have followed the traders along white limestone, roads and gliding rivers, felt the silence of cities slowly abandoned, and rested in the legacy that still lives today. The story of the Maya is not one of sudden vanishing, nor of simple answers. It is a story of people brilliant, determined, enduring, who built a civilization of astonishing depth. Their stones speak of patience, their writing of memory, their calendars of timeless order. Their lives remind us that history is not only rulers and battles, but families planting maize, artisans shaping clay, traders carrying goods across long roads, children laughing in the courtyards of homes. It is in these small, steady acts that greatness was built, and it is in these that greatness continues. The mystery of their cities remains, and perhaps it always will. Why they faded, why their plazas grew silent, why their temples were left. Behind these questions invite us to imagine, to wonder, to listen to the echoes that drift through the forest. But in truth, the Maya were never gone. Their descendants still speak their languages, still weave their cloth, still plant their maize, still carry forward the traditions of their ancestors. To look at their ruins is not to see an end, but to see a chapter, one part of a story that continues into our own time. As we close this story, let the calm of the jungle rest in your mind. Picture the vines trailing across stone, the roots pushing through ancient walls, the leaves whispering in the wind. Picture the stars above, steady and eternal, the same stars the Maya once watched with devotion. Picture the pyramids rising, still their steps silent, but their presence unbroken. In this quiet, we find peace. The legacy of the Maya is not silence, it is continuity. It lives in the stones, in the languages, in the people, and in the memory we carry forward when we pause to listen. And tonight, as you drift into rest, carry with you the calm rhythm of their story, the reminder that what is built with patience endures, and that even in silence, history speaks softly, waiting for us to hear. Good night.